Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Never before in the history of sports podcasts have two men brought you opinion and analysis like these two. They speak for a city that's desperate for wins and titles, not whining and travesty. You might not agree with what they have to say, but you'll defend their right to say it. Sports fans across the world, from Chicago, Illinois, this is the Mac and Read Show.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome into another edition of the Mac and Read Show right here on the Barroom Network. And remember to catch us on YouTube, on Spotify, on iTunes, wherever you stream the show. Remember to like, subscribe, tell a friend or two. You can catch all of our previous audio-only episodes on Spotify and iTunes. Remember to follow us on Twitter. Follow me at The Real Evan Mac. Follow Ross at Ross Read. A lot to get into tonight. How you feeling, sir?
I'm good. How you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I was commenting on his beer, drinking a beer, with the show, and he alerted me that it is non-alcoholic because it's great tasting.
This is the Athletic Brewing Company. They make a great non-alcoholic beer. It's a great post-workout drink. It's only like 70 calories, but if you like to taste the beer like I do, but you don't want the calories or the alcohol, I'm omitting from alcohol right now, Monday through Friday, as I prep for the summer that is upon us. I do my summer cut that I usually do right about now, but I still want to enjoy the taste of a beer. So it tastes great. This is also a glass that the next client of mine bought from the Masters. You can see the Masters logo on there, right there.
That's sick.
The Masters is coming soon. So we need to get ready for summer, man. We're almost here.
Almost. We're almost done with February, the shortest month, if you call that any closer to summer. We have a lot to talk about in the meantime, getting you ready for those sunny days. We'll be leading off the show with Bears free agency as that's begun and getting ready for the draft and big discussions, of course. Are the Bears going to trade back? How far should they go? Where are the sweet spots? Should they, trade with the Texans, the Colts, the Seahawks, Raiders, Falcons, Panthers? Who have they taken calls from? We'll dive into all those scenarios, as well as Aaron Rodgers. Where is he headed in NFL free agency? Is he staying put? Other headlines that are garnering a lot of attention. Excuse me. The Bulls, Patrick Beverley in, Lonzo Ball out for the season. We'll talk about the NBA All-Star Weekend and if Ross and I enjoyed it. Mac McClung saving the dunk contest potentially. Surprises along the way, but of course, the main event, the top five of this week, is we're getting a little thin with no football. We're getting into the top five of we'd say comic supervillains, as it were, going Marvel, going DC, going all over the place, which should be a lot of fun with Ant-Man out right now. Have you seen Ant-Man, Ross?
Haven't seen it yet. I'm not gonna lie to you. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you. This might be a wait till Disney Plus kind of move, which I expected to be on Disney Plus within like the next 30 days or so, right?
That's a shame.
Huge Jonathan Majors fan. I'm more excited for Creed 3 next week. He's the villain in Creed 3 than I am for
see that Majors.
We've talked about this. This whole green screen stuff is really throwing me off lately. It looks like a shitty video game. It's just not. It's not really enticing to me right now.
Yeah, that'll be part of the discussion as well as we get to that point in the show. But a lot to get to. So without further ado, let's talk about it, Ross. And even before the talk about the Bears potentially trading that number one overall pick, which they could get a king's ransom for, I don't know where depends on where you stand on it, but a big headline has of course been with Bryce Young trending upwards, being that consensus potentially number one overall pick, is this conversation about trading Justin Fields for, if you're getting Bryce Young, then do you trade Justin Fields for a ton of draft capital, something like that? And I'm over it, Ross. Any sort of discussion like this, I know that, for example, Louis Riddick is flabbergasted by this type of discussion, as am I, that it's even been floating out there. Just these rumors, I feel like, are nothing more than that. Are you as sick of it as I am?
I am as sick of it as you are, and Louis Riddick and everybody else. But here's the thing: is Chicago is the third largest market in the NFL, but it's probably the second largest market when you factor in that LA splits two teams, and nobody really gives a shit about either team in LA. So I kind of put Chicago on that New York and even Dallas level. I think that Chicago's probably like number two after New York. And you got to realize that every time we as a fan base react to this Justin Fields talk, and we're usually reacting negatively, and we feed into more clicks and the tweets and the impressions go up and stuff like that, it's just becomes content food for all these people. And they're going to continue to talk about it until we stop paying attention to it and we just leave it alone, or obviously B, which will be the latter, the Bears will trade the pick inevitably, or they will take somebody first overall that is a non-quarterback. We both think that the first option is going to happen. So I always tell people it sells because you're allowing it to sell. And the more you talk about it and tweet about it, the more it's going to be at the top of First Take and stuff like that. So, hopefully combine next week and we can get a trade on the books here sooner than later, and we can move all this past us.
Absolutely. As you see, Todd McShay believes the Bears should trade Justin Fields. It's not an uncommon opinion. I just, in this league, for all the reasons that you mentioned, Ross, and just giving it the sake of debate, it's so hard to start over when you've already, and how you need to acclimate to this league, and all the knocks on Bryce Young when he hasn't even played it down in the NFL yet, the size and what he can do. We know he comes from a winning program, but still, we've seen that some of those guys just don't make that jump. If you're Jamarcus Russells of the world, or Johnny Manziel, or name the bus, for every guy who hits, there's certainly busts. When you're, Joe Burrow, who goes number one overall, you expect something like that. So it's worth discussing. But obviously, we're on the same page with that. And getting to the real debate is, what would the Bears be doing with that number one overall pick should they not draft a quarterback, which is like a 99% chance that they don't. They're very married to Justin Fields. So his ownership shows management, and his team is building around him right now. So you think about those potential trade partners around them, right? So the Texans sitting at number 2, the Colts at 4, the Seahawks at 5, Raiders at 7, Falcons at 8, and Panthers at 9, all needing a quarterback. Seahawks maybe not so much with Geno Smith. Maybe they're looking to bolster their defense. Who knows? They might not be sold on Geno, even though he had a great season for them and got them to the playoffs. But I certainly get the best player available argument as well between Jalen Carter right now and Will Anderson. We'll see them in the combine, and we'll see what they put up numbers wise. And we know that both are game records, both playing for big time SEC programs, played in the college football playoff, and just incredible athletes, and could hopefully resurrect this Bears defense that was a big reason of why they were had the worst record in the league last year. So with these teams, Ross, what do you think? I think we'll start with who's most likely to trade with the Bears, and then what kind of return are you looking from them?
Yeah, I think if you were to put odds on who would move up to the first overall pick right now, I think the Colts would be the number one pick if we were to kind of play on the theme of this whole situation, right? To be able to do that. Listen, they desperately need a quarterback. They also didn't hire the young man, the offensive coordinator for the Eagles, to not pair him with a young quarterback, in my opinion. I think we talked about this in the last couple of shows, but that offense that the Eagles ran plays, a lot better for Bryce Young's skill set. With the ability to read the middle of the field and just kind of a quick processing situation, the play action, things of that nature. So I think the Colts are the number one team that the Bears, would move up with. I think that CJ Stroud and running that 49ers offense that D'Amico Ryans is going to bring in is actually perfect for the Houston Texans. I know the Texans or fans are probably upset that they didn't get the first overall pick, but I think they're going to be really happy with CJ Stroud. But I don't count out the Texans at all in trying to keep Bryce Young away from the Colts. So they're also potential. And then from there, you really have to look at the Carolina Panthers at 6 overall. Even the the Las Vegas, excuse me, they played in all those places. The Las Vegas Raiders at 7th overall, because I really do think that they want Aaron Rodgers, but I know he just came out of his hole today for 2 days, but what happens if that doesn't work out for them, right? They're scrambling because they don't have a quarterback. And then, I also really look at the Carolina Panthers at 6 overall. I'm sorry, the Carolina Panthers would be like at 9th overall. And I think the Titans can be able to move up as well. It just really depends on how far the Bears want to trade down. And that is the conversation that we're going to kind of have here and have tonight. I'm going to put this out there first. And I see that Cornelius has already, given us a comment on this. Jalen Carter and Will Anderson, they're them. They are them. They have about as this is all potential. This is all hypothetical, but they have about as impact as potential on an impact, from the defensive side of football as we've seen in a long time. You're talking, Fletcher Cox type level at the defensive tackle for Jalen Carter versus the Khalil Macks of the world like that for Will Anderson. Will Anderson had the most pass rushes pressures in the college football by well over 40 this year over anybody. These guys are elite defensive talent, and the Bears do not have top end elite defensive talent on their roster. I'm talking superstar talent that can take over a football game. And you have to say, is it worth dropping back to 4 and not giving as big a haul, but you get elite superstar potential versus dropping down to 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and getting a really, really good football player, but he may not be elite, but you get a bigger haul to fill out your roster. There's no wrong answer here. There is no wrong answer, in my opinion, but it's a fun debate to have.
Do you think Tyree Wilson, or, on the note of what Cornelius said there, Tyree Wilson has been thrown around there, jumping maybe, he's mocked to the Cardinals or, one of these other teams like the Seahawks. Even Will Anderson drops to 5 or 6. Miles Murphy from Clemson right now. Do those guys, does the combine change that to you? If it's a great workout or a great 40 time or shuttle time, does it really launch them ahead of a Will Anderson and Jalen Carter? Because I'm with you with those guys being transcendent players, maybe an Aaron Donald type with Carter, and then Will Anderson, a good comp for him is Khalil Mack, like you said. Do you see them getting jumped at all?
It's possible. I think the only guy that could potentially do it is Tyree Wilson. I think if Tyree Wilson tests well at the combine, which he probably is, he could bump up. I think most importantly, when you get these guys that are going to go in the top 10 of the draft, more importantly than the combine, their pro days are going to be the barometer that these teams are going to go off of. And then also when they get these guys in for individual workouts. So, we know that Ryan Poles has a type. He loves high-end athletic ability. He likes guys that are just freak athletes. He's going to gamble on those guys every single time. And I do think a guy like Tyree Wilson could potentially sneak in there and be a guy that Ryan Poles really covets, because I think he's going to test well. But boy, it's really, really hard to turn down the prospect of bringing a guy like Will Anderson here over Tyree Wilson. Tyree Wilson is going to really have to wow the Bears. I'm not saying he can't do it, but I think it's going to be really difficult in an uphill climb for him to jump over, Will Anderson. Pedigree program. Again, the numbers are there. He's going to test very well. He's a very smart young man, things of that nature. Jalen Carter as well. Jalen Carter is going to test off the planet. He is an elite talent. You talked about Todd McShay earlier. I got a bone to pick with Todd McShay. He kind of planted a story about a month ago about Jalen Carter's, maybe he wasn't the young man that we thought he was, and he had, questionable character issues. And ever since then, it's all come out to be bullshit. And there's a great story this week that was written about Jalen Carter on how he was buying lunches for young men that were walk-on players, and so they couldn't get free lunches on the scholarships. He was buying, like, that's just the kind of guy that you want on your football team. The measurables aside, you want born leaders. You want guys that are going to step into a locker room tomorrow and command that presence. And that's also why I don't think you don't trade Justin Fields, because he has a chokehold right now in this franchise and the fan base, and like, he's earned that right. You don't know if Bryce Young's going to be that guy. Bryce Young could throw a ball 90 yards down the field, but we don't know if he's going to be able to step into the frying pan that is Chicago and the Bears fan base and take on what he can take on like Justin Fields has. So, I think that for now, for me, I like Tyree Wilson a lot, but it's going to be really difficult to pass up on a Jalen Carter, Will Anderson type.
Yeah, that's fair, Ross. So talking about the teams again that the Bears could potentially trade with, and number one in the comments and a lot of people's minds would be the Houston Texans, who were right there with the Bears for that number one overall pick. And as Aldo mentioned, they could get the second overall pick, which usually you could get, if the Texans go ahead and get Bryce Young, then they could potentially draft Jalen Carter and then get that 33rd overall pick, maybe get 2 straight defensive tackles, maybe an offensive lineman. Maybe there's a wide receiver that jumps out there. One of those glaring needs could be addressed. And then the Texans, to their credit, could make that move and could make a push for it. But I don't know if there's any chance they hold on to that 12th pick if they're really sold on Bryce Young. Maybe they have to throw that in some sort of package deal. But that's to their point of having a little bit of an upper hand in negotiating. Maybe they could. Obviously, the Bears having that number one overall pick, it's just going to listen to all these sorts of offers, and I can only imagine what kind of pitches that Ryan Poles and company are getting right now.
Mm-hmm.
You see, what do you see with the Texans here at this point?
Yeah, I mean, listen, when you look at that little chart that they have in terms of what it takes to move up from 2 to 1, it's not that big. The Bears don't get as a big of a haul as you think. It's usually like chipping in another second round pick and then like a future third round pick, and that's about it. So you basically get the second overall pick, you get another second rounder probably for this year, and you probably get chipped in a third rounder for next year, right? And you have to wonder, is that enough for the Bears to want to do even business with the Texans? In my opinion, I think that your best bet is talking with the Indianapolis Colts, because I think that they are desperate for a quarterback, and I think they're desperate to jump a division rival. And I think that to go from 1 to 4, it's most certainly going to cost you their second round pick this year and probably maybe a second round pick next year. But I think that the Colts would be inclined to throw in a first round pick in 2024. And listen, history has shown us rookie quarterbacks don't really do that well. The Colts have a lot of holes on their roster. Rookie head coach, that very well could be another top 5 pick next year, which could be the difference between you also adding in Marvin Harrison Jr., which is a complete game changer of an athlete that can't come out of the draft this year, but he can come out next year. And all of a sudden, that is really enticing to me, a package like that, if you're able to get the Colts 2024 first round pick. Now, what if let's say the Carolina Panthers come calling, right? And the Carolina Panthers are drafting 9th overall. And they say, hey, look, man, we will give you 9th overall pick. We'll give you our second round pick this year. And we will give you 2 first round picks after that to go from 9 to 1. What do you do? It comes down to, do you value taking Jalen Carter or Will Anderson, whoever is your number 1 defensive player on the board at 4, versus going all the way down to 9? You're not going to get one of those guys. They're going to be off the board by then, but you might get Paris Johnson Jr., right? Offensive tackle from Ohio State. Or you might get the young man, Skoronski, the offensive tackle from Northwestern. Or you might get Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison is the outstanding wide receiver from USC. Do you want the overall haul that can make your overall roster better, or do you want top-end elite talent at the top? And that's a conversation that Ryan Poles and his team is having right now. How far are we willing to move down? Or is is Will Anderson such a generational talent that it's not worth Jordan Addison, excuse me, and 2 first-round picks, a couple years from now.
Certainly seems like, and back to this conversation about trade partners, it would be the Texans and the Colts or nobody, because for all the reasons you mentioned, Ross, and the Seahawks, I don't know if they have enough to give up. The Raiders, Falcons, the Panthers, you talked about a possibility there stepping in, but these are pretty transcendent talents that we've talked about repeatedly in Carter and Anderson. And I don't really know how you can make a case against them unless they get injured at the combine or there's something really ridiculous that happens, because we know that the SEC is certainly set the tone with a lot of their top prospects that go on to be great pros, and the Bears need someone like that. And either on paper, on the field, what you see right now, whether it works out or not, it's got to be Carter or Anderson. And your team Carter, it could be Anderson. We don't know what the Bears are thinking at that point. But I talked about the Colts and the Texans. Do you see anybody else making a big push? Could the Falcons potentially step in as an outsider, and what would they have to throw on the table?
They need, and that's it. Here, listen, this starts to get really, you can get really weird with this, right? If you're the Falcons and the Falcons call you and they say, okay, we want to move up to first overall. What's it going to take? And if you're the Bears, you could go back to the Falcons and say, cool, you want us to go to 8th overall? It's going to take you, I need the 8th overall pick. I need a 2024 first round pick. And oh, by the way, that guy Cal Pitts that you don't like to use, toss him in there too, because we're going to take that young man on. You guys don't use him. He's going to run out of a rookie deal soon, and we would gladly extend him and put him on the field at the same time with Cole Kmet, right? That's what I'm saying. It starts to, you have to weigh all these things. What if it's the Carolina Panthers? What if the Carolina Panthers are saying, okay, we have Brian Burns. Brian Burns is one of the best defensive ends in all of football right now. He's 25 years old. He's young, but he's going to want $100 million guaranteed, and we just don't think that he fits on our timeline right now because we don't have a quarterback. What if we gave you 9th, we also trade you Brian Burns? And you're like, shit, those are the conversations that the Bears have to have. Do you want to trade for the right to give Brian Burns $100 million? Bears got the money, right? So it's not a money issue. And that's what makes all these conversations fun. Is Brian Poles has his work cut out for him, but he should have a multitude of options, and they should really start coming into place next week. He's going to the combine. He's going to look at some athletes, but to me, he's going to the combine next week strictly to start to negotiate these deals and see what the best offer is. And I firmly believe that the Bears are going to have a deal in place by about second to third week of March.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there you go. And I believe it could have already potentially happened as well. And it's worth mentioning, too, in these comments that we've thrown around Anderson and Carter and those top guys, but nothing's guaranteed. Certainly we've seen, there have been busts before, but again, for all the reasons we've mentioned repeatedly, it certainly looks like the Bears would lean in hard on one of these guys, and we'd be pretty surprised. It would take some sort of really great trade involving an already established defensive player for them to go another route at that point. Especially maybe, if they're able to get a defensive tackle and then, get that later first round pick as in the 8th or 9th pick, then maybe they go offensive lineman, the best player available, because we know that's a big need for them as well. So I'm curious to see how it plays out for sure. And there's definitely been a lot of talk in the war room already. Switching focus to free agency, Ross, we keep hearing about the Saquon Barkley rumors, and that's a highly coveted free agent potentially that the Bears could be going after. But we could easily see a couple signings, 2-3 signings before draft day, before any trade has been established. What are you looking at free agency for any potential candidates to come for the Bears?
Yeah, it looks like, from all indications, it sounds like De'Aaron Payne, the outstanding defensive tackle for the Washington Commanders, I think he would have been high on the Bears list to get signed. They would have paid him close to $20 million a year, but it sounds like he's going to get the franchise tag. Washington doesn't want to let him go, nor should they. He's a elite defensive player. It sounds like they're more high on him than they are Chase Young, who they took with a top 5 pick a couple years ago. But also, Chase Young has been hurt throughout his career and stuff like that, right? So then you start to look at what's going to be plan B on the defensive side, because I think the Bears are going to spend some money on that defensive line. Matt Eberflus, obviously defensive coach. No Roquan Smith. He's got Jack Sanborn up the middle. He's going to need some big monsters up front to allow those not so great linebackers athletically to at least clean up the mess a little bit. I do think the Bears are going to address the linebacker position in the draft, but you start looking at is Marcus Davenport, New Orleans Saint defensive end, right? Veteran guy. Is he a guy that you look at? Not a big sack guy, doesn't put up a lot of sacks numbers, but he's a great veteran. He's very steady on the football field. He makes a lot of other guys, better around him. Are the Eagles, who have a lot of guys to pay this year, are they going to let Javon Hargrave leave that situation? It's possibly, right? He had 11 sacks last year. He is an outstanding player. They got a lot of mouths to feed on that football team, and he might be a casualty of that situation. If we're looking at the secondary, I think those report that came out that the Buccaneers are well over the cap and they want to cut some expenses now that Tom Brady is gone. And I think I look at a guy like Jamel Dean, who's an outstanding corner, and you see, do they want to bring him in, pair him next to Jalen Johnson, pair him next to Kyler Gordon, and then let's say you draft your Will Anderson or something like that, and you have Jaquan Brisker. That's a really nice start for a really young, fun defense. On the offensive side of football, Mike McGlinchey, to me, is a guy that you're going to hear rumored a lot for the Bears, the right tackle. I think he's going to be a guy that they're going to take a look at. Listen, we have talked about Saquon Barkley here on this show before. I'm a fan, just because, again, the Bears need, to me, as much elite top-end talent as possible. And if you added Saquon to that rushing attack with Justin Fields and Khalil Herbert, it could be very scary, and it could be very, very fun. And it opens up a lot of things, even for the aerial attack, guys like Chase Claypool, Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet, and stuff like that. The other name I would put out there, I think Draymond Jones, the defensive lineman from the Broncos. I think he's a really good fallback option for the Bears if De'Aaron Payne does get a franchise tag. I think he's a young guy that they can build with going forward, and you can realistically see a Draymond Jones / Jalen Carter defensive middle on the defensive line for them for years to come.
Yeah, Draymond Jones with 6.5 sacks last year. He's it'll be interesting to see, certainly with these guys like, Jason Kelce is not going anywhere. He's going to try to retire an Eagle, but names like Jamel Dean, he could be going somewhere else. Mike McGlinchey, like you mentioned, but he's with an established power already. So you're looking at, Caleb McGarry from the Falcons. He's a good right tackle. Do you have some flexibility where you can move guys around on the offensive line and then draft accordingly in this incoming draft? With free agency too, do you think that the Bears should be looking at linebacker at all? Because there's some bigger names out there that have come off some good seasons than you could probably get on a cheaper side of a deal at this point.
Yeah, I think so. It really depends on what they're willing to play. And you talk about linebacker. I think Bobby Okike is he's an outside linebacker that played in that Matt Eberflus system with the Colts. Listen, he had an outstanding year last year when he replaced Shaq Leonard and doing a lot of things that Shaq Leonard was able to do. And I think that Matt Eberflus and Ryan Poles are going to, stand up and pay attention to that. And I could very easily see him coming to the Bears, because the Bears are going to be able to overpay him a little bit more than the Colts can and will do. And so I think that he's a guy that they're really going to target as well. And, you can even talk about, Azeez Al-Shahir, who's the linebacker from the San Francisco 49ers. They've got a lot of guys on that football team that they love. Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw. So Al-Shahir might be an odd man out of that situation. He would be a fun guy to bring in. Very good guy at stopping the run. We didn't even talk about wide receiver. I know the Bears are probably going to pay Darnell Mooney this year. They've got to make a decision on Chase Claypool at the end of next season to see if they want to pay him. But listen, Jacoby Myers is out there. Jacoby Myers is a really good wide receiver for the Patriots, but for some reason, Matt Patricia is a fucking moron and just didn't use him. But when he's on the field and does things, he's a really good receiver. And so the Bears might, take a peek at him. A lower level option, Juju Smith-Schuster only made like $10 million last year and still found a way to catch like 70 balls and 800 yards. And obviously we saw his impact at the end of the Super Bowl. So he might be a low-level guy as well that the Bears kind of bring into.
It's not in terms of this class compared to others. I guess it's not terribly impressive. The other guy to throw in there is DJ Chark, and you think that the Lions would probably try to retain him because he had some production. Not a ton going on in wide receiver free agency. I think you'd be better suited to go ahead with the draft if you're the Bears. And it's tough right now too with what you mentioned with the Darnell Mooney injury situation. We'll see how he recovers this offseason if he can. Because we're not sold on Chase Claypool right now. A lot of holes for this Bears offense, but I think the position of focus obviously is going to be that offensive line. But we talked about Saquon and then potentially letting David Montgomery walk. That could potentially happen for sure. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
I think so too. I think the Bears love David Montgomery, but if they were to spend money at that position, in my opinion, I think that they would want somebody that's more explosive and has more breakaway speed. And that to me screams two guys. That screams Saquon Barkley, and that also screams Miles Sanders to me. So I think those are two guys that I would pay attention to if the Bears decide that they want to spend money at the running back position. They could also just address it in the draft, like a lot of smart teams do, and they find guys. We just watched the Super Bowl where Isaiah Pacheco took over the Super Bowl. He got a 7th round pick, and he looked as explosive as any running back that we've seen all year long. So also the Bears could just save their money. I think they're going to beef up both sides of the line first, and then kind of address other needs from there.
Build it in the trenches, my friends. That's how you win those rings, right? Anything else with the Bears while we're waiting for the combine next week? And we'll have a bit of a preview as everybody will report. I believe it starts next Thursday, right?
It's next Thursday, yeah. No, nothing. I mean, listen, the Bears made they made a sneaky move this week. They released the I forget his name already, the defensive end that they got from the Colts last year. And freeing up his salary allowed them to get them back at that $99 million cap space position. So they are well ahead of everybody else right now and having the most cap space in this situation. But that doesn't mean I think that they're going to spend crazy. I think they're going to try and lock up some of their guys first. I think Darnell Mooney gets a new deal. I think Cole Kmet gets a new deal. I think potentially Jalen Johnson gets a new deal as well. And then, from there, then they start playing in the deep end a little bit, like we've been saying. Defensive line, offensive line. I think they're going to spend some money there as well. But I think, pay attention to the rumors coming out of the combine next week, because I think these deals, when we circle back to that trading the 1st round pick, I think these deals come to fruition next week at the combine, when these guys are able to get in the same rooms with each other, go to dinner, have drinks, do these kind of things and kind of really iron out these things. I can promise you it's going to be in Indianapolis. Jim Irsay is going to be walking around. I think he really, really covets that 1st overall pick, and particularly Bryce Young. And I think he needs him. He wants him. He realized he fumbled the bag with Andrew Luck, and he's got to right the wrongs of that situation. And I in my gut, it feels to me that the Bears are going to be making a trade with the Colts to go to number 4. And I think they're going to bend the Colts over, and they're going to take a 2024 1st round pick in the process.
So you don't think they stay at number 1? You think they work with the Colts?
I think the Colts are there's too much smoke right now, and I think we're going to start to see some fire really soon. I think the Bears will be drafting 4th overall this year, and I think the Colts will move up to the 1st overall pick to take their quarterback of their future.
How about it? All right, we'll see what happens. And in other NFL news, as you alluded to at the beginning of the show, Ross, was Aaron Rodgers, and he's a big storyline. Him and Derek Carr, of course, the biggest quarterback names that Derek Carr for sure out with the Raiders. We're not sure what Aaron Rodgers is thinking. Leading with Rodgers, everybody's heard about it at this point. His Hobbit-like structure, this retreat that he did, that apparently is this darkness retreat where it was a 300 square foot room, and he spent his time partially underground, devoid of light, with a queen bed, a bathroom, and a meditation-like mat. And he was just in there trying to find himself, I guess. Would you ever do anything like that? I don't think I could.
I don't know. I feel like I did that when I was
for a day.
I feel like I did that when I was like 24 to 28, and I had a studio apartment on LaSalle and Maple on the Gold Coast that I was paying $875 a month for, and it was
Yeah.
basically a room, a bathroom, and a kitchen that like you can fit in and nobody else, and then that was it. And I moved out. I spent a couple of years there because the location was great, but then I moved out because I met my future wife, and we could not start a future together in a room with a bathroom attached to it. So
You
I
already
feel
had a better sense of where you were at in life. Yeah.
exactly. I feel like that's just anybody that lives like how is that any different from an apartment in New York City? you know?
Yeah, he could have just done that. Don't want to throw money. Um, Very interesting. So now apparently he has what he's been looking for. He has this better sense of where he's at in life after being in darkness for God knows how long. It seems like the odds honestly look like he would stay in Green Bay. He just doesn't maybe want to do what Brady did and go to another team and start over, so to speak. But I wonder how much ayahuasca he did in that dark room, by the way. But I I'm I'm not so sure he goes and we know that the Derek Carr is being pushed hard by the Jets to come over there, and they're probably giving a bit of a pitch of that to Aaron Rodgers. But he's a California guy. Maybe he's getting pushed by one of the some of these West Coast teams. Maybe the Raiders are making a push, but I just don't see it when he's had this whole career with the Green Bay faithful. He just seems like a creature of habit, and looks like signs point to him staying in Green Bay. What do you think, Ross?
Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to, I mean, he holds, all the balls in this court. So,
Yeah.
he can dictate what he wants to do. I personally think that the Green Bay Packers are done with him. I think they're done with the nonsense, but it's like you can only keep this charade up when, when you're not good anymore. He really has declined as a player. They didn't make the playoffs last year. He really regressed. He did a lot of finger pointing around the entire organization. And I think the fans, I was there last year for a game, and the fans really were kind of out on him. It was really interesting to see. And I think the players are also out. If he stays, through this year, that cap hit goes from like $40 million a year to like 60 something million dollars a year. I think the Packers want out of that situation. It just really depends on what Aaron wants to do. If I were him, from a pure football standpoint, the Jets make the most sense in the world because they've got a really good roster. They've got the offensive rookie of the year. They got the defensive rookie of the year. They have his old friend and Nathaniel Hackett calling plays that he has a really close relationship with. That would make the most sense to me. Also, it's a winnable division in my opinion. I know Josh Allen runs that division right now, but I think Josh Allen can be beat. I would go there if I were him. But I don't think that he wants to deal with New York media, which can be a real pain in the ass. I also don't think he wants to deal with the constant comps of you're following Brett Favre's footsteps. As we know, Brett Favre left the Packers to go to the Jets. So then that would also put in the Raiders, right? Would you want to go to the Raiders? Makes sense. They got a good team. Got your old buddy there and Devontae Adams. He's now standing receiver. You got Darren Waller there. You got Hunter Renfrow. There's some pieces in that situation. But what's wrong with the Raiders? Here's what's wrong with them. The baddest man in the world is in your division. You got to play him 2 times a year. You're not going to beat him probably. You're not going to beat Pat Mahomes. Pat Mahomes is on another stratosphere right now. Guess who's creeping up in that situation? Justin Herbert. He's a damn good football player. He's a better quarterback right now than Aaron Rodgers. And you just entered Sean Payton into that division. We don't know what he's going to be able to do with Russell Wilson, but I think Sean Payton is a better head coach than Josh McDaniels. In my opinion, Aaron Rodgers can go to the Raiders. They can still be the 4th best team in that division. And it's like, well, what the hell did you do all that for, right? So to me, it's going to come down to him. I kind of agree with you. As much as I hate to say it, I think he does go back to the Packers with them kicking and screaming.
It comes back to what I talked about earlier in the show, where it's so hard to start over. And when you have a guy, when you think about Green Bay's quarterback history, and right before Aaron Rodgers, it was Brett Favre teaching him the way to play quarterback in a way, and adjusting to the NFL and sitting behind Favre. And now they're not sold on Love, right? As the guy potentially to go forward. So why would you move on from him when you really didn't do him a ton of favors? You kind of see where Aaron came from besides the rookie Dotson, where he had a great season, where really he didn't have a ton of help outside of him. I know he had Lazard, who was good number 2 or number 3 at best, where he didn't have that true number 1. He's slated to, as you see in the bottom of your screen, if you're watching along on YouTube, slated to earn almost $60 million in guaranteed base salary and signing roster. He basically is the defunct. He's like what LeBron is to the Lakers or whatever LeBron, whatever team LeBron plays on. He is the defunct GM. I'm sure he gets all these sorts of calls to mold the roster to his liking to that end too. So he probably wants a lot more help on the offensive line, and maybe they'll swing for some of these free agents that we talked about to certainly shore up the offensive line and have a better defense and take that step, because in the NFC, it's the Lions and Vikings are right ahead of you, but Green Bay's certainly right there with the Bears at the bottom of the barrel right now. So I just think it makes too much sense for him to stay in Green Bay, even though the Jets would be agreement with you that would be a good landing spot for him potentially, but staying in Green Bay.
Yeah, and maybe the Jets don't want to deal with that nonsense. I mean, here's the thing: is like, who wants to deal with this bullshit right now? He's on Pat McAfee's show every other week. He says he's going to go into a retreat for 4 or 5 days. He even lies about that. He goes in there for only 2 days. It's not really. He's not in a cave. He's in some apartment somewhere. It's just all bullshit right now. It's like, who wants to deal with this for a guy that isn't really putting up the numbers and the stats that he used to? He just looks like he doesn't give a shit about football anymore. If I were the Jets, as much as I think that he could potentially put them over the top, do you want to put that gamble out there? I think Derek Carr is a serviceable quarterback, but I think that he can at least regale that locker room a lot more than Aaron Rodgers can. And this also is like, how long are you willing to wait on this? Because we don't know when this decision is coming. He said it can take a couple months from now to do that. Just can't wait on that. If Derek Carr calls you tomorrow and says, hey, you know what? I want to come here. I want to move my family here. I want to be your starting quarterback. If I'm the Jets, a bird in the hand right now is worth 2 days in a hole of Aaron Rodgers, whatever the hell he's doing.
I like that. That was well said, Ross. All right, we've talked NFL at length. Let's switch focus to our lovely Chicago Bulls. And we got the news this last week, which we basically saw coming, as far as Lonzo Ball being shut down. And on that note, it's just time to try to get rid of this guy in any way you can at this point. When he hasn't played in 2 seasons, it looks like next season is certainly up in the air. And when you lose that time, it's only going to set you back as a player. You ask anybody when you have injuries like that. I mean, who knows if he returns to basketball at this point? It's pretty unbelievable. But on the heels of that, the Bulls wanted to shore up the backcourt a little bit, and they wanted Chicago's own Patrick Beverley, who is one of the loudest guys out there, who is just playing with LeBron and the Lakers. He certainly hasn't had his best season statistically, but you know what he brings defensively and a veteran presence. And you heard all this week that Levine had certainly made a push. That basically Patrick Beverley had said he was going to get on Levine's ass to push him, to get him to perform better. And with DeMar DeRozan, that backcourt could take a step in the right direction defensively. We don't think it's certainly a complete game changer for this Bulls season, but did you like the move, Ross?
Not necessarily, because here's kind of where I'm at with the Bulls right now. They have lost every single game since the trade deadline, and since Arturas Karnisovas did that press conference saying that we believe in this core group and continuity and all that bullshit. They've lost every game since then. They play tomorrow against the Brooklyn Nets. It's a home game, and they very well could lose that game too. That new look Brooklyn Nets team is feisty.
They look good.
Yeah, they're a feisty team. So I'm to me right now in full tank mode as a Bulls fan, because if they don't finish with a 4th overall or better pick in the draft, they will give that pick to the Orlando Magic. And I do not want to give that pick up to the Orlando Magic right now. Bulls right now have an over 35% chance of finishing in the top 5 of the standings of the lottery, which means that they've got a high chance of getting a 4th overall pick. And then they've got about a 7.5% chance of getting Victor Wembanyama. And he's the prize. He's the one. If you have a 7.5% chance of getting Victor Wembanyama, I will roll that dice over seeing the Bulls get their ass kicked in a play-in game tournament this year and getting eliminated by the Washington Wizards. What is that doing for you? So what is Patrick Beverley doing for you in these final 20 games of the season so you can go in there and do a play-in
He's
tournament?
trying to make them get to the playoffs. That's what he's trying to do, which sucks because I'm with you. They should tank.
Exactly. You have to look. You have to see the forest through the trees, and all that toughness and all that BS. None of that stuff matters in Chicago. You need top level talent. And the only way the Bulls are going to be able to get that is they're going to have to draft their way out of this. They're going to have to draft themselves a superstar. And I want as many swings as possible. If I got the opportunity to get Victor Wembanyama, I'm going to take that 7.5% chance of trying to get him. Also, have you been watching Kansas basketball this year? Kansas hoops, college hoops? Probably not.
No, it's too early for me. Yes, although I like Grady Dick. I saw him in the McDonald's All-American game. He's nice.
Is the guy that I was about to mention. Grady Dick is a 6'8" small forward shooting guard for the Kansas Jayhawks, and he's him. And he's got a potential. He's slotted right now to be about that 4th or 5th overall area. This young man can shoot. He's got a lot of charisma. And I am on the brick for Dick bandwagon right now. Whatever you have to do to potentially bang for Dick, right? So you got Vic or you got Dick, but I'll take either one of them. Pause for the Bulls going forward, whichever one you can secure. That to me is more important than going to some damn play-in tournament. That doesn't do anything for me.
Hey man, I'm with you. I'm just saying it's not going to happen. These players now, especially with Patrick Beverley, he wants to. The chats are going wild now, and Patrick Beverley wants.
Could you imagine? He would have the number 1 selling jersey in Chicago after Justin Fields. Could you imagine a Bulls Dick jersey? The city would go crazy.
City would go nuts. There'd be a lot of Dick jokes.
The whole chat wants Dick. They're all up in arms. You guys take it easy.
They're all Dick crazy. Relax. Luis Villasenor is banging the table for Dick, as you see there. You want Dick? Thank you. Keep it rolling. I would be satisfied with Dick. There you go. Keep it going. Keep it going, Luis.
Whatever sponsor we wanted at the beginning of the show, we just lost it.
I'm glad that Patrick Beverley just spiraled into this, and the Bulls are a shit show. We know this, and they're likely going to lose that first game against the Nets, and there's a chance. I mean, I'm with you. We're seeing Wembanyama as the consensus number 1 overall pick. If they had some sort of chance to get him, oh man, could you imagine? He'd be transcendent. But it's very Bulls for it to not happen and then to be right outside the lottery there. But in the grander scheme of the NBA, Ross, did you catch the All-Star Game festivities? Did you catch the dunk contest? We know that the game itself is trash and there's no defense and feels like there's no fixing it, but what did you make of the dunk contest in the game?
I saw the 3-point shootout. Dame Lillard was awesome. I did watch the dunk contest. Matt McClung was great. Shout out to Matt McClung. Everybody loves that great white hype too when he shows up in the dunk contest. The shades of Brent Berry and Bob Sura back in the day, and Tom Chambers. If you're old like me and Aldo, you remember Tom Chambers back in the day. So I love Matt McClung. I thought he was awesome. I just wish that there was somebody to push him in that dunk contest, and I wish that we had more stars. I think that some people have heard my theory before, but I think it's really difficult to convince guys making $35-40 million a year to show up to a dunk contest when the pot is $150,000. These guys are not getting out of bed for that. That doesn't do anything for them. They're not going to risk being memed and made fun of on Twitter and TikTok if they miss a dunk for $150,000. In my opinion, you need to call Adidas, you need to call New Balance, you need to call Nike, and you need to all say you guys are putting up $5 million a piece, and I want you to send your best 2 or 3 players, and they're going to compete in the dunk contest. Right? Zach LaVine, Team New Balance, let's go. John Morant, Team Nike, let's go. Whoever is on Adidas, let's go. Let's put these guys in there and put that pot in there for $15 million and say, winner take all. And then, oh, by the way, because we make billions of dollars as shoe companies, we're also going to donate $5 million to charity of your choice when you win. And I think that's what gets these guys out of bed and doing these dunk contests. I think LeBron James, put a nail in this coffin and said that it's not cool to do it, and he got pissed off because the NBA wouldn't put him in the dunk contest as a rookie, and Sprite was sponsoring him at the time, and Sprite was sponsoring the dunk contest, and Sprite didn't really fight for him. I don't think a lot of people know this, and so LeBron really was upset over that, and has really, I think, turned off a lot of the young guys going forward towards competing in this contest. And hopefully that does change after LeBron leaves. But to me, the shoe companies can really fix this tomorrow by putting up some money and making this exciting again. Because while Matt McClung was fun, I would have really liked to have seen John Morant or Zion Williamson or Zach LaVine or some of these stars that we have in this league, some of the more notable guys like we saw in the past, right? We grew up watching Jordan and Dominique and Kobe and Vince Carter and all these guys do it year after year.
You tune in to see the best players in the league, and the dunk contest used to be those guys for everyone you mentioned, Jordan and Dominique and all the guys in the past, Dr. J. But now you're seeing guys like, again, Mac McClung, phenomenal dunker, and he did great, all 6'2" of them, and he had a great week signing with Puma, and he signed with the 76ers. But before that, he's with the G League, and all these other guys are, 6 men, 7 guys off the bench. Yeah, he was with the Bulls for a hot second, and I think the sales for his G League jerseys went up and shit like that. But dude, I'm with you 100% that there needs to be some incentive to get these guys back into the dunk contest, although it was a very good dunk contest. And McClung, he's like, it was very impressive. Certainly when we've seen the whole 2 minutes or minute and a half, whatever it is, just miss after miss, just hitting right away, jumping over guys and really just unique dunks. So credit to him and having a great week with Mac McClung. To the game, it's exactly as we expected, just Olay defense, business decisions, no defense whatsoever. This whole Giannis is a captain, LeBron's a captain, and then draft your roster is bullshit. Go back to the East-West, make it international, but do something. Change it up a little bit. It doesn't make sense to do this, and then you see like Lauri Markkanen or Jokic being last man off the bench or something, or picked last. It just go back to East and West, and then make it worth something, right? When you have that, and also it's so weird with the scoring and how it restarts in the second half at zeros, and it's not, by the end of it, it doesn't matter. And then it's first to 99 or whatever. It just doesn't make any fucking sense. It should be 4 quarters. It should be East-West to me.
Who has the best format for an NBA All-Star game is Ice Cube in the Big 3 league, right? Like that makes a lot of sense. Is you just go Big 3 and you play a game of 21 3-on-3 basketball, and you play it at half court. I'd watch that. And you could even have like dueling, one game's going on this side, the other game's going on that side, and kind of, jump around a little bit and stuff like that. They've got to switch that up a little bit. I don't think that having it in Utah helped a lot either, that Utah is the most uncool place for an NBA All-Star game. Next year, it doesn't get any better because it's in Indianapolis. So, they got to get it to more fun places. I know Vegas has put in a bid. Get it to more fun places where you want stars to show up and these guys to come in and stuff like that. And get Carmelo off the fucking stage, please. This guy's a freaking pedophile rapist. Get him off the stage.
It was cringy. Indy, at least they got that's the Hoosier State. They got a lot of basketball, history there.
Yes.
All right, we've talked at length sports. We're running out of show here, but we got to get to our top 5, Ross. The top 5 comic book supervillains is on the heels of Ant-Man and the Wasp, and I haven't seen Kang besides the little bit in Loki.
The Conqueror.
And Jonathan Majors, he stays winning right now with Creed coming out soon. But top 5, it's hard to boil it down, and you wish that we had a good representation of like Doom out there when you think of comic book supervillains too. There's a ton of options out there, but what's your number 5 if we start from 5 to 1?
Yeah, my number 5 is probably Superman's arch nemesis. Superman's arguably the most impactful superhero of all time for us. But his arch nemesis, Lex Luthor, is my number 5. I think Lex Luthor as a character has aged very well in the mold of that would definitely be Elon Musk today, right? Like if Elon Musk just shaved his head and decided instead of putting all his money into Tesla, he just wanted to like create weapons and bombs to take over a world, and we have to trust an alien from Krypton to be able to save us every single time. So I love that. I mean, the idea of having a normal man, but just be a really rich supervillain who wants to take over the world is really funny to me this time around. So Lex Luthor will be my number 5. Not the Jesse Eisenberg version though, but I do love the Gene Hackman version from the old Superman movies in the 70s and 80s. Gene Hackman, shout out to the GOAT.
It was a little different than the usual Lex Luthor. And for those in the comments and listening, this is what I believe Ross is basing his stuff on is comic superheroes. It's not Darth Vader or Shooter McGavin or whatever fucking movie villain you're thinking of. but I appreciate that. Darth Vader is a badass villain. But number 5 for me, I enjoyed, and you wish that you saw a bit more of him, but you saw shades of him throughout the franchise. But I'm going Green Goblin. I really enjoyed, and for me, a lot of it now and a lot of my ranking is bringing it to life on the big screen, right? And I think that Willem Dafoe did a fantastic job of it. In Spider-Man, in that first one with Tobey Maguire, James Franco, and all them. So that would be number 5 for me. And I got quotes. We got some media too. I got some audio here. Right. So I'll play my one of these Green Goblin quotes here.
Didn't hear it. We didn't hear it.
Can't hear anything?
No, didn't hear it.
Well, that's a shame. Well, I won't waste your time. Okay. Number 4 for you, Ross.
Yeah, shout out to William Dafoe, though, another great actor who played the Green Goblin. Absolutely outstanding. So my number 4, speaking of being portrayed very well twice to me, is the great and powerful Magneto. And so Magneto, obviously the arch nemesis of the X-Men, Magneto being a mutant himself who can obviously control and manipulate metal and use that to his advantage. And sometimes he's been a good guy. Sometimes he's been a bad guy. Sometimes he's been partners with Professor X. Sometimes he's been against Professor X. We've seen him portrayed by Sir Ian McKellen in the early X-Men movies. And then we saw him being portrayed by Michael Fassbender in the late X-Men movies. I'm almost positive that we will get a X-Men reboot here in a couple years. It'll be interesting to see who's going to portray him on the screen. But there are not more powerful villains, if you think about it from a pure comic book standpoint, than Magneto. And I always like the villains that have a little bit like you kind of can see why they're like, you can kind of see their point, right? And he basically said that we were treated wrong just because we were different from everybody else, and why should we just adapt to them? We're more powerful and strong to them. They should adapt to us. And he's kind of got a point. Listen, if I was able to move metal and shit like that, you probably should do what I tell you to do, and not vice versa. That's my number 4.
Yeah, I like that as your number 4. And Magneto's on my list as well. And he was played really well by Fassbender and Ian McKellen. And I really liked in Days of Future Past how you got to see them going back and forth before we saw the Marvel verse and whatever else happening on where they were going to those different versions of that character. And it's kind of a reoccurring theme with guys like Thanos and Killmonger in these comic super villains where you kind of see their point. And certainly the mutants were downtrodden. So he was certainly a great super villain. And I liked him at number 4 as well. Who you got at number 3?
My number 3 is a guy that is very strong, very terrifying, was able to break Batman's back in both the comic books, and then we saw it in the movie, obviously, with Tom Hardy played him, Christian Bale. Where's Bane? Where's Bane? He's like, I was born in the darkness, molded by it.
Since you can't hear my quotes, you got to have Ross do impressions.
Of course, that's Bane. Bane is awesome. Bane in the comic books is just as terrifying it gets. I love the way Tom Hardy portrayed him on the screen, aside from the voice, where sometimes you wouldn't be able to hear him that well. But Tom Hardy admittedly bulked up about 90 pounds to play that role. He said it almost killed him. That the size and the mass was almost too much for him. But I love the character. I love the character in the comics. Love reading about Bane. He is my number 3.
Yeah, he's impressive. He's number 3 for me as well. It's pretty much 3, 4 for Magneto and Bane. It was really it was awesome to see Tom Hardy, and he has a lot of range in the in these movies that he goes and on the big screen as, and he certainly killed it as Bane. And I think that voice didn't get old to me until you've heard the quotes over and over again, and people doing their Bane impressions. But you would have also liked to see him maybe see him in another Batman at some point. But number 2 for you, Ross.
Number 2 for me is I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I'm gonna name two guys. Yeah, I'm gonna name two guys. I'm gonna name two guys that I think that are almost impossible for Marvel to portray on screen. So I don't think that we'll ever see these guys. The first one is Doctor Doom. Shout out to obviously the amazing rapper that kind of took on that moniker. But Doctor Doom, huge enemy of the Fantastic Four. We might see a Fantastic Four reboot, and maybe they can bring back Doctor Doom. But it's just really tough to recreate that character very, very well. And the other one I think is the toughest of all, as they try and transition this thing into space. Galactus is the ultimate villain again, back with the Fantastic Four and Silver Surfer and Guardians of the Galaxy. But when Marvel started going into space, basically Galactus was the more powerful version of Thanos out in space. I just think that those two guys are really hard to configure and manipulate in the form of TV, but in the comic books they were as terrifying, as exciting as they got. So I'm going to put a tie to those guys, Doctor Doom and Galactus.
Oh, I like that, Ross. And number 2 for me was Thanos, and he's between Galactus and these other great Marvel villains that have been out there. He's one of the ultimate badasses in that franchise, besides Kang and Galactus, like we've mentioned, and brought to the big screen as the big purple guy. But Josh Brolin as his voice was really good. And again, talking about his whole philosophy of population control to save his planet, as you're seeing if you're watching on YouTube, this clip of him on Titan and how he snaps his fingers and then half the population disappears and he watches the sunset. It's dark, but I don't know. He's got some points there. But Josh Brolin was really good. And it took two movies for the Marvel Avengers to beat him at that point too. Number 1 for you, Ross. I have a feeling we got the mutual number 1.
Well, I'm sure we do. Yeah, we first saw Thanos at the end of Ultron. He was the one that sent Ultron after the Avengers, and then at the end in that stinger, he says, "I'll do it myself." And then we got that journey into Thanos. Number 1 is the GOAT. It's the Joker. He's number 1. Obviously we all go back to Jack Nicholson. We all go back to Heath Ledger, who were both iconic on the screen. But for me, it goes back to the comic books. And in particular, as I got older, I got more interested in graphic novels, especially like the Frank Miller graphic novels. Frank Miller is the creator of Sin City, but he did Batman graphic novels for a long time. In particular, there is a graphic novel called The Killing Joke. It has been since turned into a movie. I think you can catch it on HBO Max now. It is as wild as it gets from a superhero story. He is absolutely batshit crazy and a complete lunatic, and it's really fun read. I implore everybody to go out there and find the book. You can get the book on Amazon. You can obviously watch the movie, but it really shows you how much of a psychopath the Joker is and how he is second to none in terms of villains, in my opinion. Obviously, we got Joaquin Phoenix. He's going to come out with the second part of the standalone movie, The Joker. But I think we're also going to get Barry Koenig, who we got that last shot at the end of Matt Reeves' The Batman movie. That was Barry Koenig at the end. If you watched Banshees of Inisherin recently, he plays the younger guy in Banshees of Inisherin. He's nominated for an Oscar this year. He was also in Dunkirk. Phenomenal young actor. I think if he does become the Joker going forward, he's going to do just fine. But that is my number 1, the Joker.
Yeah, when you talk about, and again, for me, is the jump to the big screen. And we've seen a lot of iterations of the Joker, even going to the cartoon. Like Mark Hamill was a fucking great Joker. And on one of the animated series that was long running there. But we've seen, Jack Nicholson was pretty great, going back to the first big Batman films. And then you saw
Shout out to
Jared Leto. Jared Leto
Yeah.
is it's just going and taking that idea of that psychopath and just really not a rhyme or reason to how they're going on their quest to beat Batman or just cause chaos in Gotham. And Joaquin Phoenix, he did a pretty good job of that. And then that sort of different take with Todd Phillips. But the bar is set for Heath Ledger. And you wonder if Heath Ledger had stayed alive, like what would have happened if we would have seen them meet again in this franchise. If Christopher Nolan, it would have probably shaped the franchise a lot differently if he had not died. And what an iconic role and bringing him to the big screen. It was incredible. So yeah, the Joker stays unbeaten. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'd be remiss if we didn't shout out Cesar Romero. When I was a younger kid, I would watch the old 1960s Adam West.
Think about Adam West. Yeah, Adam West.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Cesar Romero is freaking awesome. If you go back and watch some of that stuff, he is just absolutely amazing on TV, especially when he's on TV with Eartha Kitt and stuff like that. Those are really good stuff. So the Joker has been around for a long time. I absolutely love him. Two quick honorable mentions for me, because I think that we've seen them in movies before, or we've seen them in cartoons, and they seem a little bit corny, but they're a lot better in the comic books. Number one for me is Bullseye, the villain from the Daredevil movie, played by Colin Farrell. That movie sucks. But if you read some of the comic books and see some of the cartoons and stuff, Bullseye is a lot more fun character. And I hope that they do some justice to Bullseye going forward, and they give him a better situation. The other one is the Shredder. Come on, listen, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a comic book, and we remember cartoon and remember the silly movie, but Shredder is a really fucking cool villain if you think about it. And it'd be really cool if they can reboot that situation and bring the darkness energy to Shredder that he deserves. Those may be my two honorable mentions that people would think are corny because we remember from the movies, but they're actually really fun villains.
Shredder was great, whether it was cartoon or those. I like those live action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles when they threw those out there as well.
Yep.
All right, we've ran out of show. Thanks to everybody for watching, listening in. If you've been watching on YouTube, thanks to all the barflies for commenting as well. And follow us on Twitter. Follow me at The Real Evan Mac. Follow Ross at Ross Read. You can catch all our previous episodes on Spotify, on iTunes, on YouTube. Remember to like, subscribe, tell a friend or two. Follow the Barroom Network at Barroom Network. Thanks to Aldo for helping us out producing tonight. Everybody have a great weekend. We'll be back same time next week. For now, we say deuces. So long, everybody.
Peace.